Let's take this conversation forward, Vikram, and include Arun Thukral, who's MD and CEO, Axis Securities. Arun, thanks for speaking to us right here on Lunch Money. What sort of direction are these markets taking, and also what are some of the calls you're taking sectorally, given the valuations and levels that we're witnessing?
So market is, as we know, that going up one day and coming down another day because of global cues what we get on a day-to-day basis. What we have seen recently when Jerome Powell gave the first testimony, then again market got slightly worried that he's going to continue the rate hikes. If not 4, at least 3 will happen this year. And there are a lot of other things happening. Some data is expected, like non-farm payroll data will come. And in the Indian context, if I look at some good numbers, GDP numbers have been definitely good. And if you look at closely, even the factory PMI data also continues to be above 50, as well as the core sector output also is very good, around 6.7 as compared to maybe 4.5 odd then in December 17. So all these numbers show a good story that at least India is growing, and if there is a growth in manufacturing, construction and agri, so construction, if there is a growth, then that is also augurs well for the job growth in the country. So these are some positives. Even the monsoon, if you look at the first indication which has come from IMD is talking about La Nina, which is good for the monsoon. So that also should be positive. Flows, obviously we are worried about the FII flows. There are outflows maybe around more than 1 billion as of now in this calendar year, but DII continues to pump money and that number is over 2.5. So if you look at all this, there are positive and negatives together. So the volatility will continue, and there will be lot of opportunities as far as the investors are concerned. And we continue to be bullish on auto ancillaries, whether it is four-wheelers or auto ancillaries, more so because they supply not only to the Indian listed company but also to all global major apps who have set up shop in India. Apart from that, infra player we are obviously liking because there are a lot of spend going to be there on infra, and the light balance sheet player, EPC player, we are quite bullish on, and our rural story should continue. If the monsoon again we are saying will be good, so and this year a lot of things for farmers in the budget, so the companies which are catering to this space should do well.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are going to touch upon some of these stocks and sectors that you're talking about, Ashok. So we want to kind of take a little bit of a breather and also draw our viewers' attention to the numbers that are being reported by Tata Motors, and we'll come to that in a moment. But the numbers look pretty okay. There's passenger vehicles, 45% growth. There is 54% in LCVs, and the CVs are doing quite well for themselves, and we'll get you more details on that. But the big story, the big bank fraud, now that is something that we've got our focus on. Punjab National Bank, we hear from sources, is now working on strengthening the process and systems to identify other fraud cases as well. Let's find out what's happening over there. Swati has these exclusive details for us, and she's joining us here in the Mumbai studio. Swati, what do we know about this? Obviously, this would be expected of Punjab National Bank, and some of these processes are going to be under the microscope, as it were, to make sure that all stops are pulled, to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. But now what's underway at Punjab National Bank?
Well, absolutely. I think this is what the board is actually now working on to strengthen its systems and processes. And that, of course, as you said, is something that they should ideally be looking at. But what I know at this point in time, that they've actually gone, the board has gotten cracking and going behind the loan defaulters. Now, this is over and above what they are doing with Nirav Modi and the case that we are all talking about, the LOUs that were issued. But beyond that, the other cases where there are a lot of loan defaulters, we are not, there has been a lot of work that the board is sort of getting into and is in constant dialogue and conversation with the employees, with investigative agencies and so on. Now board, by the way, has met 4 times already since the LOU fraud has come to light, and they have been discussing various ways to look at the issue of obviously recovering money here, because that is the big concern that the markets also have. We know the companies or the bank has already lost a lot of market cap, and there are quite a lot of liabilities that the bank has now to honor, which of course the bank has already said that they're committed to honor all bona fide obligations. So in order to bring that amount together, there is a lot of work that the board is working on. First and foremost, I'm also told that they are in dialogue with other banks on their dues, and they are all cooperating and not sort of breathing down their neck to clean up or clear up their dues. So there is a bit of a breather for Punjab National Bank on that front. Also remember, there is 5,000 odd crore rupees that the bank has raised as QIP in December, so that money is there. Then they have about 5,000 odd crore rupees clearance from the government from Finance Ministry on the recapitalization plan. So you have about 10,000 crore rupees in the kitty in that sense. Other than this, I'm told that already they have managed to bring 1,000 crore rupees worth of properties and jewelries that are now under seizure, and ED and CBI etc. are working on further recovery of the assets etc. from these. So there is an ongoing process to recover as much amount, and they are very hopeful that with lots of systems and processes in place they will be able to do that. Very important, they are looking at the technology upgradation, and by the way, when this fraud took place or when it got detected, that's the time the bank was migrating from Finacle 7 to Finacle 10. And now they have fully migrated to Finacle 10 software, and that is pretty much stabilized, and this is obviously a more powerful and more robust system that they will be working on. So all of this has been discussed at board level. There's a constant dialogue between all the members of the board, and they're sort of looking to recover the money as much as they can and ensure and of course working on how much provisioning etc. will have to be done for the next quarter. So that's where the focus is right now.
All right, thanks for taking us through all of that, Swati. But just want to also talk to our viewers about the fact that we've been looking at that deep slide in banking stocks, and it's not just the PSUs but private sector banks that also seem to be taking quite a hit. What we're seeing lately is ICICI Bank that's down for the 3rd session in a row. It's almost down, I believe, about 7% from 327 to a low of 304 just earlier today. In fact, the market seemed to be concerned over the exposure of ICICI Bank to multiple NPA accounts, including ABG Shipyard, as well as Gitanjali Gems, amongst others. Let's get in Siddharth Zarabi to give us some more perspective on this. Siddharth, just a quick update from you on this. You've been tracking these stocks very closely. What is it that's concerning the markets when it comes to ICICI Bank?
Well, over the last 3 days, like you correctly pointed out, the stock's been down 7%, and clearly some worries, perhaps, but what is it that really is at stake here? Over the last few days, you would recall we focused on individual NPA cases like ABG Shipyard, and I'm not even talking about the Gitanjali Gems fiasco that's captivated the nation. So look at ICICI's exposure to ABG Shipyard, roughly pegged at around 4,400 crore. The exposure to Gitanjali Gems is at 780 crore, and let me point out for our viewers that this 784 crore is the second highest exposure to Gitanjali Gems after, and predictably, Punjab National Bank. Punjab National Bank exposure at 984 crore. ICICI Bank is just 200 short, and this is quite apart from the exposures to Videocon, to SR Steel, to Bhushan Steel, to JP Group, and that's a pretty long list at this stage. And I think the overall issue that is coming up at this stage is that with the ABG Shipyard bids at NCLT running into rough weather, almost a strong likelihood of serious problems with the bids. We know that pretty much everyone who was a serious bidder has run away, and there's only one entity called Liberty House who may not bid, we don't know. left. So the issue of the ABG shipyard and what has happened, including the siphoning off of funds from there, that is the matter of a separate criminal investigation. In any case, there is a FIR also that has been filed. So focus shifting really to what is the action that is being taken on the other accounts, because the overall trend so far seems to have been to just go after the public sector banks, but I think deeper realization is seeping in market players about the extent of NPAs, the extent of things that have gone wrong specifically, and not just normal business failures, but wrongdoing, lapses, misappropriation, fraud that has happened in so many of these NPA accounts, and that is why the exposure of even private sector banks like ICICI, among others, is now becoming a matter of concern. In fact, just to end by telling our viewers that we are going to debate this issue about the failures, the lapses of controls, and the concerns that have happened, including some complaints that have been made to various investigative agencies, including SFIO, about alleged irregularities in these banks. And that's going to come up for a discussion at 4:30 today, as we try and put the spotlight on the fact that it's not just public sector banks, but serious questions around private sector banks and their exposures to multiple NPA accounts and their consequences and the impact for the economy.
And Siddharth, thanks for highlighting that. That's an important discussion that you're going to be having. Just once again, as Siddharth was saying, it's going to be at 4:30 p.m. This evening. Siddharth, thanks for that. Arun Thukral, coming to you on this one. Siddharth was was specifically pointing out about the fact that we need to be looking at how private sector banks are also perhaps doing business. We've talked about NPA exposures, as well as some of the concerns that have been, of course, raised originally through PNB and how PSUs have been run. But as investors, how are we looking at this universe of private sector banks, both in terms of the NPA issue as well as also the concerns in terms of risk and regulations?
So there are private sector bank and there are private sector banks. So what I am trying to say is that within private sector banks, there may be some banks which are exposed to corporate loan book and the procedures and regulations. So I would not like to comment on specific bank and specific procedures. But one thing which goes in the favor of private sector bank is that they continue to gain market share. So I think that's a very big positive because the kind of retail focus these banks have, the kind of technology adoption, the kind of incentivization for the staff or retaining the best talent, that goes in their favor. If over a period of time the share of PSU banks is shifting towards private sector, that is going to benefit them, and that is going to give them a buffer to handle their corporate big if there are issues in the cycle going wrong and all. But obviously the specific fraud cases, specific lapses, that the regulator has to look at, and that I should not comment. That anyway, if something has gone wrong, that has to be corrected. But overall, we like the private sector space as far as the overall, if you have to choose between PSU banks and private sector bank, and that's why we are more bullish on the private sector banks.
Fair enough. Yeah. In comparison, I think that makes a lot more sense. And of course, Arun, we will come and talk much more about these banks and private sector banks, like Siddharth was pointing us at 4:30. Do keep your appointment with us on BTVi for that special discussion. But let's also talk about auto sales numbers. I was telling you about Tata Motors, and that has, of course, come in just a short while ago. Growth momentum is continuing. 38% increase in its domestic sales performance is what their press release says, but we'll get a little more color on this. But even before we get into that, let's talk about electric mobility, and the plans are with Mahindra and Mahindra. They're starting some serious work on their high-end electric vehicles. So there is layering coming in on the electric mobility front with companies looking at the high-end electric mobility space much stronger, and among them is Mahindra and Mahindra. They've lined up investments worth 1,000 crore rupees for that segment here in India. So what exactly are those plans, and how is it tying in with Pininfarina, their brand that they've got? So let's find out from Swati. She's still with us. Swati, to walk us through Mahindra and Mahindra's plans in the EV space.
Well, so if you know, that's the only company right now in India which has an all-electric vehicle. Of course, there are just a couple of them that they offer, and they have been working on this electric vehicles plans and strategy for a long time. What we know now is that they're taking the game more seriously. They are now looking to actually make products which will be pitted against Tesla, and that I think will be very critical to watch, because the kind of performance and the kind of product that we are talking about are really high performance products. So it needs the serious investments and the kind of money that will have to be put in. But if you know, Mahindra has already announced its EV 2.0 plan, which essentially caters to products that will be given in the commercial vehicle space. These are the electric vehicles, and also for high performance electric vehicles. So what I know for now is that there is a project Montana that Mahindra and Mahindra has started, and this is the EV project for high-end electric vehicles that they are working on. Well, for the name, they said that that's the name they like, so that's how the name has come about. But the point is that if you see the investments in India already, there's about 1,000 odd crore rupees that they've invested, and they're committing quite a lot of money going from here on. They've been tying up with a lot of smaller startups and companies, etc. Even the two-wheeler space, they've been working on the Gen Z scooter that we see, but of course it's not coming to India as yet. But the point is that they will be looking at investing even more going from here on for high-end EVs, and these are for global markets to start with. India may take a while, because this is mainly to cater to the European markets. And what's interesting is that, and my sources confirmed, these were reports initially, but the sources confirmed that the former Audi India head, and if you recall, Michael Perkshke, he is perhaps going to be heading Mahindra's high-end EV project business. So that's this is getting actually very interesting when you're seeing Mahindra and Mahindra getting into this game for making high-end electric vehicles. They already cater to the mass products, but you know, they are now looking to really compete with Tesla.
All right, thanks a lot for taking us through all of that, Swati, and we've of course been hearing from them in terms of how they really want to compete on that level. Thanks for that. Let's in fact focus on those auto stocks, because they're very much in top gear. Maruti's February sales up 15%, Bajaj Auto also reporting 21% jumps in motorcycle sales. My colleague Bhaskar is joining us with a complete breakup of those numbers. Bhaskar, take us through how we're looking at those February auto sales that seem to be very much in top gear.
So the auto sales numbers for the month of February have been pretty okay so far. To start off with, the expectation was low on the back of a low base due to demonetization lag effect. From the PV space, we have Maruti, who reported a good growth, but it missed the estimates marginally, as total sales were up 15% from the estimates of 18%. Domestic PV sales grew, led by the growth in the compact and the utility vehicle and passenger car segment, which grew by 17%, led by Swift, Ignis, Celerio, Baleno, Desire, Tourist. Cias and vans witnessed a degrowth, while exports are also seeing a gradual pickup of around 25%. From the two-wheeler space, we have Bajaj Auto, who reported a strong month with numbers above estimates, showing a strong domestic performance on the back of its two-wheeler sales with a growth of around 24%. Also, performance in the CV segment was quite strong with a growth of almost 111% YOY. And from the CV space, we also have Ashok Leyland, who reported a strong month, which was above, with a growth of almost 29%. With this was above the street estimates, as the total sales of both HCV and LCV segment outperform expectations. We have Tata Motors also, who have shown a strong growth of almost 38% in the total sales, which was in line with the estimates of the CV, with estimates as CVs performed strongly with a growth of almost 36%. And lastly, from the tractor space, we have Escorts, who have shown a strong growth of 52% in total sales at 6,000 units on the back of domestic sales growth of 53%. So it would be interesting to see how the markets react to these numbers, and how the other counters from the auto pack perform too.
Well, it has done pretty well for itself, even if you go by the numbers so far, Bhaskar. And, well, the markets are reacting quite positively because you see the auto index, which is up in the green by about 0.4% right now. And that includes Tata Motors, which is up about 1%, Eicher Motors by just about that much. Mahindra is also up, and Bajaj Auto clearly in the green about 0.6%. We also connected with S. Ravi Kumar, who's President of Business Development and Assurance at Bajaj Auto, to get the company's growth outlook, and this after they posted a strong February sales number. Listen in to what we heard from them.
As far as this fiscal is concerned, you already have the 11 months numbers here, which is 36,72,000, and I think again March should certainly be comfortably be over 350. So it's going to be a robust number after a gap of a few years. We are now going to certainly cross this 4 million plus type of a number, and that's where the current fiscal should end.
All right, so that's the latest that we're getting as well, and that's from our Ravi Kumar. Just want to bring in my colleague Swati back into this conversation because we understand that the Jaguar I-Pace is going to be making that public debut today and will also be showcasing at the Geneva Motor Show 2018 on the 6th. Let's in fact go across right now to Swati, but just before that, Vikram, just wondering if you know more about this.
Yes, absolutely, and Swati is just joining us to tell us a little bit more about the I-Pace, and we're talking about all these plans within the auto world, but the February auto sales numbers for Mahindra and Mahindra have just come in, and they're looking good as well. The stock is of course up right now. It's about 0.8% up, but look at those numbers, 51,127 units, and this compared on a year-on-year basis, they have done pretty well for themselves. The passenger vehicle business is now at above 22,300 units, and the exports are at 2,654 units. So February not looking too bad for Mahindra and Mahindra as well, and those are the kind of numbers that are coming in right now. But Swati is now here with us to tell us about the Jaguar I-Pace. Do tell us, as far as the EV segment is concerned, it's buzzing, isn't it? And it just seems to get better and better with all the announcements that are expected, and this evening of course is going to be the big launch. It looks beautiful, but tell us more of what we know already about the I-Pace.
Well, as you said, this is getting exciting, and this entire electric vehicle place and space is obviously buzzing with a lot of products that everyone's trying to show. And as you can see, the I-Pace is going to be a very important product for Jaguar, and this product of course will be globally unveiled today, as you would know. What's interesting is that this is going to be showcased even at the Geneva Motor Show on the 6th of March. So next week we will see more of the product and of course a closer look at the car. But today we know that the deliveries of this is expected to actually start from the second half of 2018. Mind you, it's not coming to India as yet. This is more for the global markets to start with, the European markets really to cater to, and this is the first all-electric car from Jaguar ever. It's actually positioned between if you see the hardware and the structure of the car is actually based on the F-Pace, but this is actually a car which will compete with Tesla Model X in the electric SUV market, as you can imagine. So it's not just Mahindra which is trying to get some competition or trying to give competition to Tesla, but this one is already ready to compete with the Tesla. Now if you talk about some of the features of the car, four-wheel drive, charges 80% in 45 minutes with a 100 kilowatt DC rapid charger. So this is a fast charger that it works on, and that's really the key. The technology advancement is happening on how quickly can you charge the car and what is the range, and the range is important to note here, 500 kilometers that it can run up to in one charge, which is actually quite a good a range to start with. Now the power, because a lot of people want to know whether it's as powerful as its other products. So with two motors, what you're getting is a claim power of 395 horsepower and torque of 700 Newton meter. So it's pretty powerful really. I mean, of course when we drive it we'll have a better sense of it. 0 to 100, for people who are obsessed with the speed, should know it takes less than 5 seconds, by the way, on that, and clearly been tested around the world in different terrains, minus 40 to 40 degree kind of weather. So it's been like a product which has been in the works for a while. We saw the prototype, we saw the and now the finally out in flesh, which will be showcased at the Geneva Motor Show, and deliveries, as I said, will start sometime later. India will have to wait maybe a year or two before it comes here, because we need to get our infrastructure in place, really.
And the infrastructure is going to be the big game, of course, that everyone is waiting and watching. Of course, as far as the government is concerned, they are holding back on the entire EV policy. So, and some of those luxury players like Mercedes-Benz that you spoke to, Swati, they are saying that it's a bit of a U-turn right now. So they're seeing it as a little bit of a drawback, as it were, in the entire drive towards building in electric mobility in the country. But Arun, wanted to get your take on this. As far as February auto sales numbers are concerned, we've gone through the ones that have already come in, whether it's Maruti, Escorts, Bajaj Auto, Ashok Leyland, Mahindra and Mahindra have just posted their numbers. That in the short term is obviously going to play out on the stock price movement. But in the long term, with all these electric mobility plans, the outlook for the auto sector, for the most part, seems promising. How do you view it, and which are your top picks over here, looking at the kind of valuations that we have within that space as well, especially with some of the front runners like Maruti?
So I agree with you that it's a matter of time that the electric vehicles will definitely come into India also. But having said that, Maruti as of now is doing very well, and the kind of share they have, the dominant share, if every second car is Maruti. And we have been obviously very bullish on auto and auto ancillary space, as I always talk whenever we have such interaction. And now even Mahindra also we are liking because of two reasons. One is obviously the numbers are good, and second the agri story or rural story, because the tractor, the CV and also Mahindra has twin triggers. So and the two-wheeler space, Bajaj Auto. So these are 2-3 stocks which we are following at this valuation, and we are advising our customers to buy on dips, because there is going to be volatility in the near term because of the various factors which I explained. So as and when there is volatility, there is some downward movement. I think these are the stocks to own. And if the electric vehicles is going to be the story of the day, then these are the bigger players. Mahindra has already taken a plunge. I think Maruti also at some point of time will get into this. You can't expect the #1 player in the country not to look at this space. So that's why we are not too much worried. If the electric vehicles come, these bigger players will definitely get into this. Tata Motor, as of now we are watching, there are positive green shoots which we see, and maybe at some point of time we will have a close look at Tata Motors also. But as of now, overall auto, we are very, very bullish, along with Tata Auto Ancillaries.
All right, I'm just going to take our attention elsewhere, because the story we've been tracking, of course, is Fortis Healthcare, that is now trading in the green with gains of about 1%. It has been, of course, under fire. The person who's been under fire is the CEO, the Bhavdeep Singh, who's now clarified that the auditors, Deloitte, had unearthed a few issues that cannot be disclosed because of implications, as he's calling them. Just hear out that commentary first, and then we'll get into what's happening with this company.
January started to come back a little bit. The month of February, with 3 less days, was actually stronger than January. And we expect March to be a good solid month. And I'm expecting a very, very strong 18-19 going forward. Company initiated investigation that's going on. We had an audit, as you're aware, that was signed off. The audit points out 3-4 issues. The function of the audit, basically the concluding statement is that they cannot comment on the financial statements because of the impact that these 2-3 items might have on them.
All right, that's the latest from Bhavdeep Singh. Arun, we've been talking about how the story has been developing around Fortis, but as an investor's point of view, here is a stock that's kind of being looked at quite carefully. There are issues that have been, of course, raised when it comes to the auditors raising a few flags there. Are there any opportunities going forward when it comes to this particular stock?
So we are not tracking this stock, but as we have seen the kind of stock price movement in the recent months, maybe the investor should not rush into this. That is what I feel. And if the things are clear, and maybe for the short-term trading opportunities, this is a good opportunity, and they shall go with the trend. But as of investor is concerned, I think we should wait and watch, and once the things are very clear, then only one should get into this. And overall healthcare sector otherwise is good, because if the country has to go forward, the healthcare sector has to, and there are not many good hospital chains around. So that way overall the sector is positive, but the specific stock we should wait and then get into as an investor.
Arun Thukral, such a pleasure talking to you this afternoon, Managing Director and CEO at Axis Securities. We look forward to many more opportunities in the future, even as we watch the markets, which are trending in the green again. We are high on volatility in these markets. 10,512 is where we currently find ourselves at, and India VIX has gone flat at this point in time. And we're looking at some of those movers and shakers. We'll continue to do that after taking a